All right, guys. So, welcome to another testimonial. I know how a lot of you guys are always telling me about how to get more testimonials on, and yeah, I appreciate obviously how important it is to get as many testimonials as we can. Michael's one of my clients, and Michael came to me and says, "Would it be okay for him to come on and talk about his journey so far on the program?" So I think I've known Michael for 3 years, maybe four. He got in touch with me a while ago, wanting to begin the program and sort of start the program. Felt at the time he wasn't fully resonating with it. He ended up leaving the program, and then after a while, I don't know how long, quite a few months, he sort of came back, start the program again, and yeah, since he's restarted the program, he's gone through some amazing changes. Some of the stuff that is hard to describe on the program and hard to describe as a practitioner, he seems to have started to go through. And I think it's when you go through some of them powerful, deep aspects to the program is when you really get a lot of respect for it. And it starts to open your eyes a lot more about how amazing and powerful the program can be. So without further ado, I'm going to give it over to Michael. Michael's going to explain his situation, his story, and if there's any questions that I've got, I'm gonna chip in. So yeah, take it away, Michael.
Great, sure. So essentially, I mean, you can say all like trauma or discrepancies in life kind of stem from childhood,
Mm.
and so that was like the case with me too. And just to kind of put it in a nutshell, there's just a very like disharmonious childhood, a lot of going to see my dad every other weekend and just a lot of like stressors, and so in that didn't have a lot of friends or any like close connections with peers or things like that. And so I feel like that, to just kind of make it brief, was kind of a reason for the behaviors and like lifestyle that I ended up having as a teenager. And so essentially I started smoking weed at 14, and that was kind of, I think, like a great like start to how I've found where I am today. And so essentially, it was kind of like one of the first times that um, having like that high or smoking weed in general is kind of a connection that I had, that I hadn't really felt before in life. And I think it was more on like a spiritual aspect that I was kind of like um, relating to something that I hadn't been able to before. It was kind of like filling that void, if you will.
Mm.
Um, and so my use of weed really um, was just like 0 to 100. It was just like quickly turned into like completely encompassing my whole being in life, just in like, eighth grade of my school career, 14-year-old,
Mm.
Um, and I had um, like the buddies who I first smoked with, I never really was like, felt like I was true um, friends with them. Like they were like more into like the street sort of like um clique, if you will. But that was just my way to like get weed, and that was how I was introduced to it. So I was kind of like involved with that sort of street crowd for a while, but it never really like resonated with me. It was just mainly to smoke was like the reason for being with them. And that theme kind of stayed with me throughout high school. Like it wasn't necessarily, I kind of disengaged from the really like street crowd, and um, kind of made friends with people who were more like in high school, who just like were just more average, like playing games or sports and stuff. But still, like the only common denominator in those relationships is weed too. So it's like
Yeah. So
I was
you
never
was
really.
14 at this point. Just as for perspective for the listeners, how old are you now?
Yeah, I'm 21. I just
21.
turned 21 in January 29, 2021.
Cool, cool, cool.
Yep. Yeah, and so just fast forwarding a little bit, I pretty much instantly became dependent with weed, and I think that was just a manifestation of um, a like centering problem in myself, that I wasn't dependent or independent, within myself. So I was like, weed was kind of that vice, that like um, just that kind of escape, or something to explore, because I feel like I'm a very intellectually oriented person. Like that's kind of where I get my stimulus, is like researching and stuff. And weed I kind of consider like a sister psychedelic to like shrooms, or kind of that. It kind of, in my experience, it's given me those kind of insights and like perceptions of reality. And that's kind of also what really brought me onto the spiritual path, and recognizing after using marijuana that I was able to perceive reality in different ways. And then that, you know, realization came to just like recognizing that there's a lot more than what seems to be or appears to be at face value. And so, um, in that regard, I'm very grateful for like this whole experience and journey leading up to where I am now. So, essentially, um, yeah, I had a really strong dependency with marijuana pretty much just right out of the gate at 14. And this continued um, and really up until just like a year or two ago was really like where the hammer came down, where I, really had the self will and determination to make a change within myself. But it's not like I wasn't trying, or had attempted many times before. Um,
Just
and I'll,
why do you want to quit if weed was this bit of a exterior, a spiritual experience? What was the downsides to smoking weed?
mm,
So
exactly. Yeah, it was a strong like love-hate relationship. Um, Mainly because I was abusing it. I wasn't like respecting it or anything like that. So it's like there was a period when I was going where I live, there's a little hiking trail like oriented in the neighborhood. And so for a period there, about I think 15 or 16, I would always go out to the forest, and I'd have like a bong stashed out there. And so that was like, it was kind of like doing a little Amazon retreat every time, because I had to go out there to smoke. And that was in the Pacific Northwest of the US. So it's very rainforest, like tropical, similar to the
right,
UK's geography. And
okay,
so I was just getting super connected, like with that kind of natural psychedelic aspect. And it was just very boundary dissolving, like of the world, which was kind of, I think, what I needed, because that's what happened at that time, for me to then get where I am or find my path now. Um, but I was doing like a very religiously kind of situation, and going out to smoke and things like that. And so I was finding like insights in that. However, I was doing it daily, and it was like however high I got up, that's how low and depressed I'd feel like afterwards. I'd go just as like low and apathetic, because I just think on a chemistry or biological sense that it completely replaced my naturally occurring serotonin, the
okay.
THC,
Mm.
and and so that was kind
How
of, I
long
think.
into the how long into the weed smoking did you start feeling the depression after the highs?
Mm, I mean, pretty much. It was probably shortly after I like gotten into it, I recognized that was an aspect of it. However, it was earlier on when I was like 14, 50, and it was still such a novelty kind of experience and new thing in my life that I was able to like feel like I had some sort of relief from just the stressors of being a westernized person, you know?
Mm.
And so it wasn't enough really to make me fully conscious of it and or act on quitting necessarily. Um, but yeah, so this escalated uh, a lot, and I had been caught by like my mom at times, and that was just very troublesome because we had a really close relationship, and then like that kind of started a whole um, several years of like deception and stealing and lying, you know, because I was just dependent on this substance and kind of a whole like partying lifestyle and in general, you know, playing a lot of like video games and just kind of just it all escalated into like a really self-destructive behavior. Yeah.
Not looking after yourself.
And and so essentially I was just like burning myself out this whole time, and it was only about it was like just less than 3 years when I ended up reaching out to you, and that was like the end of 2016. At the very or yeah, it's probably like November or something, 2016.
It's like 4 years.
And pardon?
Look, about 4 years back, 2016.
Yeah, I got my hair tested in February 2017. It was like February
February
1st.
20. That was the first one.
Yep. But we were in contact before then and stuff.
Cool. February 2017. I can see it.
Right. But essentially, what I
So you got in touch.
You.
Yeah. Just explain how you got in touch. Why you got in touch. Where you at.
Yeah, exactly. So it was all really came to like a blowout. Essentially, is how all these like symptoms that I've known or now have known, like visual snow and severe depression and derealization, depersonalization, the list goes on, is because a mushroom trip that I had taken in, I was 16, and it was probably my second or third time messing with mushrooms. And my friend and I had gone to the Oregon coast, and it was just a couple days of camping in a minivan, just threw a mattress in the back, you know, and it was just like, um, just thought it would be standard issue, you know, just going out and just spending a few days with the coast and things like that. But of course, we like brought weed and we're smoking like a chimney the whole way there and stuff, you know, and essentially just had taken the mushrooms. I think second day or something, and um, it was like not a really super profound trip, but it was more on the benefic side. Like it wasn't necessarily a bad trip, if you will, but the trip never really subsided was the thing. Like
Even are we talking the next day or day after, it just kind of carried on a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that happened to my friend recently.
Even to a degree, it's like that visual snow and the occasional derealization and depersonalization, I feel like all kind of like lingering from that, because I think that was just the straw that broke the camel's back, essentially, after over 2.5 years of just completely abusing my synapses and adrenals with marijuana, nonetheless, my whole childhood of sugar and processed foods, and constantly going up to see my dad, like driving an hour and a half each way, just as a kid, like every other weekend, I imagine would have been very taxing. And to be honest, I don't even recall a lot of my childhood because I feel like it was just so uncomfortable and like just a lot of stressors that it wasn't like I wasn't fully present. So I think that is just like my whole life pretty much, and then especially smoking the weed was just like my body couldn't handle anymore. And then the mushroom trip was like,
was you drink every weekend? Or any other sort of drugs, stimulative? No,
not particularly. I mean, I would
like more the psychedelic stuff.
Yeah, like couple acid trips. Nothing like in like heroic doses, but enough that I was using them, like going to parties and stuff, college parties when I was like 16, 17 and stuff. And because there's like a big city, Portland, Oregon, which is just like 20 minutes from where I was living in Washington and Vancouver. And so pretty much that was kind of my blowout was after that, because and how I knew something was wrong, like shortly thereafter the trip in late 2016, was we were driving the van back like after we came down that following evening. And I think I was driving back, and I noticed like the the visual effects of the shrooms were like still present, and it was actually the visual snow mainly. But so that's when I kind of knew like something was off, and I also just like felt really like heady, and spacey and stuff like that. And so pretty much like days following, then I really set in, and I was like really getting concerned because it's like you hear those infamous stories of like being perma-fried or whatever, and having a trip or a drug and it doesn't ever stop. And so this is essentially to a degree what had happened. But I think it was more so because it threw my body into just a complete state of just
survival
not
mode.
Functioning. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had no clue that anybody else, what visual snow was, what HPD was, or anything like that, so that was even more traumatizing being at like 16 years old and just thinking like, well, I just completely destroyed my brain and my capacity to succeed in the future, or something like that, because it was really traumatizing, because I just had this complete field, like a complete screen of just visual anomalies, and it's just like that it keeps you in your head because you're like looking at it like right in front of your vision.
It's like wearing a motorcycle helmet sometimes, and the screen is just full of snow and after images.
Exactly.
And it's fogged up at the same time. That's how it can feel for many people. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, because it's accurate, and it kind of just like feels like it's something that's just like keeping your energy like all in your head, And so pretty much that was the beginning of just the complete train wreck.
Was the beginning of the start, really.
Yeah, exactly. And so essentially I was soon doing research, just like looking up my symptoms and stuff, because I was like, what else can I do, really try to see if anybody else has experienced this sort of stuff. And it wasn't actually too long after that I had found your videos on YouTube. I think specifically it was one on visual snow, or I think it was one of the old like adrenal ones maybe, but I found your videos and it was just like just a great sense of like resonance with them and just the logic behind them, things like that. And also I was just coming um, in search from a place of such great deprivation, you know, and just like disparity more so, that I was just like, okay, this is like guys saying, you know, this is what he's experienced, similar things, and he's been able to address them, then it's certainly worth looking into. And so I did. I think I shortly thereafter had sent you an email and gotten in touch, and we like Skyped or something, and just had a chat, and I was explaining my situation. And from what I recall, I got a hair test a little bit thereafter and started the program. However, I was in such a state of debilitation that I didn't fully comprehend the program nor read a lot about it on the website or anything like that. I think I was mainly just watching some of your videos and had read bits of the like this thick packet in the like years ago that you would I think they still do it, but like goes really in depth on the program, you know, and everything.
Yeah,
Like,
the program's big. That's the thing, isn't it? You know, so there's a lot of stuff to take in.
yeah, but there's this type of program that you can order where you get like this packet of information that like goes into specific details on all the different minerals and stuff.
Oh yeah,
If you know what I mean. And
yeah.
so I got that and like printed that off, and it was just like a little bit overwhelming, you know, especially with all like the symptoms and what I was experiencing, all the depression and just like apathy. Um, that it was just like not a lot um, incentive, I suppose, for me or even energy to like really go dive deep into what it all means. I was mainly just looking to get out of like the rut I had found myself, you know. And it was also my mom who was helping me at this time because I think I had explained to her. I don't know if I told her at that time that it was all drug induced, but I explained to her that I had this visual snow stuff and other people have it. And this program I found and this man, Lewis Rowlands, has, you know, um, found ways to address this otherwise mystery illness that doctors have no clue about and stuff like that. And so she was on board because she could tell I was just like completely neurotic pretty much at that point. Like, you know, it was just really wild, my state of mental and physical, emotional health, everything. And so we had made an effort, my mom and I both, like she would help me with food occasionally, like cooking some lamb patties and stuff, you know, like we were
Okay,
kind of
yeah.
doing we were kind of doing our
Yeah, I remember
best.
your mum was involved a little bit. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And we were kind of doing our best to like do the program or what of it that we felt like kind of made sense. Like I didn't even know coffee enemas or saunas were really a part of the program then. But I'm pretty sure my mom knew, and she was like, "No, you're not doing coffee enemas and stuff," because you know she's just like it's out of her um, paradigm, if you will. You know, like that's kind
yeah,
of woo woo, where like you know a 16-year-old doesn't need to be doing that. When in reality, that would have been like a whole game changer for me. Looking back with my experience with them now,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
but so essentially, uh, I was I was only eating the diet, but I wasn't doing the diet like properly at all, really. If you know what I mean, like, I wasn't eating nearly enough vegetables. I wasn't, um, I wasn't just eating enough, you know, and so that was kind of getting ahead of myself. But one of the reasons why I didn't stay long on the program, And there's many factors that I can briefly get into. One was that I was a high school student at the time. I was going to school, 5 days out of the week, and bringing a thing of steamed vegetables to class and like cracking it open and you just fume everywhere, just, and I was doing kind of mono meal too. So it was just like Brussels sprouts and like everyone's just like turning around looking at me, as I'm just like sitting there chowing on some Brussels sprouts and stuff. And it was just like, so it just seemed like all the odds were against me, like there wasn't there was like a common thing with the program.
Yeah, it's challenging. Yeah, I remember those days too.
And
Stairs.
exactly. But I mean, I had a couple friends that like that were like supportive, and weren't like criticizing, but they didn't completely understand it either, which is fine too. So I was also doing the supplements really well. Like that was like probably the one thing that I was doing, and that was probably the one thing that gave me the downfall because that induced a lot of things to start being released and removed from the tissues. However, I was doing no detox procedures other than the spinal twist or like the occasional foot reflexology. And so that stuff was just like circulating around me. I had nowhere to go, and so that just completely escalated and amplified all my symptoms. And that even drove me to an even more like neurotic and like just disconnected state. And during this time, I also was had decided to start soccer. So I was like playing soccer, and I was like, I hadn't really played much sports or any sports, so I just figured like it was like my junior year in high school, and I was like, I might as well, just try it because I'm only in high school once. And made like the C team, and stuff, and just kind of was like at that level, but still like running a mile every practice and stuff, and just like still playing games. And while I'm not eating anything but Brussels sprouts and like some kefir and a couple lamb patties and stuff, just like really it was just like a recipe for not sustaining on the program. And so it was. And also, it was extremely difficult to stop marijuana at that time because while I did initially, because I recognized that was a big factor in why I was the way I was, but because all my friends were smoking, like that was the only like factor I had with my friends, was smoking weed. And so when I stopped smoking weed, I had no friends essentially. I mean, I did to a degree, but like if I was to go hang out with them, they would just be smoking, And so then that environment too. And so then there's just like there was this little period of great isolation, which also like added to this maddening mentality. And so that wasn't really feasible either, just because I wasn't doing the program very well and didn't have a lot of great understanding of what the program even was and why I was doing it. And so long story short, yeah, I stopped the program probably 2 to 3 months in. I like just decided I couldn't do it anymore. And things then like escalated and didn't necessarily get better. Like my marijuana use continued and the dependency grew, and also more things started to manifest and emerge because I wasn't addressing the root cause, which was self-love and also having a grounded lifestyle or something to really hold on to. And so this, continued to manifest this kind of same dependency like issue was kind of the root of it all, I think. And kind of trying to recall exactly the timeline of it occurring, because I had encountered a lot more self-destructing behaviors that wasn't just substance abuse necessarily. But yeah, I think there was a point in time where I had tried to stop marijuana again, and this was shortly after the discontinuing of the program initially. And also during this period of starting the program, there's just like so much restriction that I hadn't experienced before in my life necessarily, I don't think. Just in regards to the diet and lifestyle, going from this smoking weed every day to like being stuck in my in my room. And
just quickly, it's one of the reasons why I'm sort of building this new app, and one of the things I'm going to attach onto it is a step-by-step process on how to do the program. That's a much more smoother way of doing things, because at the moment, although the articles are absolutely amazing, to digest all of that all at once is pretty challenging, especially for a young person. So I just wanted to put that out there as just to give people an update on what's been going off.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'll be getting into a subject that I've just been recently really starting to come to terms with myself, because it was a very just like humiliating type of period in my life. It wasn't very long, but like it was just very degrading, like on a soul level and a self-esteem level. But I feel like I want to include this because it's just such a important factor, or like ode to how far I've come and like the kind of situation that like I've been in and where I am now, sort of thing. So essentially, I think so with the whole restriction aspect of feeling like I was like so limited in what I could do and things like that, I feel like this is how this extreme manifested. And so it's kind of like humorous that I can look back on it now. But so I had quit weed, and so then there was still this feeling of lack or void, or like I needed something else to grab onto or cling to. And so I kind of started to find that in like food and sweets and things like that, because I was just kind of another stimulant. And I was just at such a depleted and malnourished state and sick in all degrees of life, mental, emotional, etc., that I just like was just finding an escape. And if it wasn't weed, then that was a start in my perspective at that time. However, there's this one evening in particular where I was like having a couple little candy bars or something, like and one like turned into 3, and then 3 into like 7, and then into 10, and into like 20. And then I just like was just sitting there like with myself, just feeling completely disgusted, like especially all that just garbage in your stomach. You just feel like just foul. And almost as like a primal sort of like instinct, I had I'd gone to the restroom and purged it all.
Wow.
And I feel like this was also, I just don't feel like it's very human. Like this, it gets into eating disorders, and this is just
Yeah.
my belief and perspective now, looking back and how I view the world. So just any viewers, like, you can think of this as you will, but I feel like at this time I was extremely influenced by discarnate spirits and like entities and things like that, because I was extremely vulnerable. I was not grounded in the slightest bit. I had marijuana dependencies. I had blown my energy field to anything and everything that would want to tap in or somehow use my energy or anything like that, mess with my body. And so I feel like that's a great contributor into how and why this short period in my life manifested. But to continue, I then went back to my room after I had purged, and just in a really sick and like just coming from a place of complete just toxicity, I just thought like, wow, then I could like eat all the garbage I want and not like, you know, suffer any consequences if I just purge it afterwards. And this was like pretty much how I developed bulimia. And I didn't even know what bulimia was at the time. Like I kind of just coined it or manifested that, discussing like principle for myself at that time. It wasn't until after I realized that I researched like what is like binging and purging food like all about, because I knew like it was obviously an eating disorder, and then learned it was bulimia shortly after my habit of that. And yeah, so this was just a really, and this recently resurfaced in my healing journey. Not like that I uh, relapsed or anything, but like that it came up to be like to readdressed and healed and to make amends with and to conclude, sort of thing. And so that's why it's still kind of just tender, if you will, like, because it's just a really just humiliating, not necessarily in the sense of what I think of other people thinking of that about me, but more so just like that I was doing that, and like that was something I was doing to myself, and feeling like I needed to do that. But again, I'd like to emphasize that I do feel like I was also heavily influenced and oriented with like, negative entities that would benefit from that type of behavior.
Yeah. So
And
it brings up a lot of shame.
shame, right?
A lot of shame, and very quickly, my friend's gone through a similar situation. Psychedelics completely blew his head off using mushrooms, and I can tell that he's just riddled with discarnate entities. You just blow your aura up so much. This whole idea of sort of extreme yin and holes in your aura and just expansion. That it's of my personal belief that entities can go in there and take over and bring you down and make you do pretty dark stuff, from being bulimic to other things. So I just want to
Exactly.
It's not nice
right. And so essentially that was, and I was also like periodically, I don't feel like I ever would have gone to commit suicide, but like that was kind of like a borderline feeling of just like not being able to bear it like at all anymore. And that was like shortly after, that was like throughout starting the program, because I wasn't detoxing anything from my body, but I was releasing it in my body. And that just, and that just
made
drove
things 10 times worse.
exactly. And so there was this borderline sense of like just chronic depression, borderline suicide tendency or feeling, you know, throughout this period. And so to move forward, it wasn't like, it was maybe a few weeks or a month after binging and purging garbage that I reached out to my mom to help for help, and I to explain just where I was, like what I was doing, and I just felt like I needed somebody to know, and I felt like it was just right for her. Um, and she was kind of more frustrated that I was like wasting all the food to a
Okay.
degree. But she also, because it's just like, it just is coming from such a sick place that it's kind of hard for somebody who doesn't recognize how like dark places can be to like understand things like eating disorders and stuff like that. But she knew she had to be just supportive in that regard, and so she was. Um, and it was just also more so for myself to know that somebody else knew, so that gave me like an incentive to stop as well. But it really wasn't all that difficult to stop, because I just consciously knew how disgusting it was, and how unsustainable it was, like how you just cannot go on like doing that, you know. So I managed to stop that, but the root of that problem and the weed problem was still there. It was still that dependency or feeling like I needed to find refuge or escape from reality. And that was just I think, an even darker manifestation of that, the bulimia episode. But, and so there's still, moving forward, there's still kind of that feeling of lack, obviously. And I watched a documentary. Well, interestingly, actually, I got a lot more into nutrition after my bulimia thing, because I was like, I think it was just something spirit or just some sort of intuitive sense, knowing that um, nutrition would make it feel like to where I didn't need to binge or didn't need to eat sweets or garbage, you know, that I would be able to eat something and then feel content with that in my body and feel nourished, and not having like, not living to eat, you know, as opposed to you eat to live sort of philosophy. And so that was kind of a principle that I like came to understand from that extreme that I had experienced and delved into.
Yeah.
And so I watched a documentary called Forks Over Knives.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with it?
Forks over knives.
Yeah. It's a strong
Is it
vegan
not vegan?
propaganda.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a vegan, I
I've heard
call it
about it.
propaganda.
Well, it should be called propaganda, in my opinion.
Movie or documentary on Netflix, and that was shortly after the bulimia episode. And it was, as a word, like a term I like to use that I heard from you, is that veganism was a very romantic idea from my coppery yin, quote unquote spiritual, you know, insights or pursuits at that time. And so I was like, so that was a factor of me getting on board the vegan train. Another was thinking, well, seeing just all the studies, or like thought to be scientific, quote unquote, information or data that they were providing about how like animal meats or protein and cholesterol and like, you know, heart disease and all that. But now I recognize with a little bit more insight and wisdom as years pass, that it's very easy for um, scientists and pharmacists and people of that nature to skew the results of tests and data, using different controls and things like that. Like you can get whatever result you want from running a test, and in doing so promote this paper that's all scientifically researched. So that was another factor, was just seeing. No wonder all my family has diabetes and cancer and stuff. It's like which is like a factor, and I think too much animal protein can completely create toxicity in the body, especially in the degree that Western civilizations are consuming it.
Yeah, I mean, the studies on cancer was studies of people generally eating lean cuts of meat, and also eating a sort of standard American diet. So that automatically, if you eat lean cuts of meat, then it has more cancerous properties. If you eat meat with sort of tendons and skin and ligaments, there's anti-cancerous properties in there. But if you combine that with a standard Western American diet, it's sort of, that's where you get the cancer, the cancer studies. But yeah, if you look at our ancestors who ate predominantly red meat most days, there's literally 0 cases of cancer. And, one of the reasons is that they weren't eating junk food, but the other reason was they weren't eating lean cuts of meat, they was eating whole foods, which is super important to know, So when you look at it from an ancestral perspective, it's actually anti-cancerous. The diet of vegetables and, nuts and just whole foods with meat. So yeah, it's big propaganda, man. It's really can get sucked into that sort of field.
Yeah, especially in my position at that time mentally, I was just really vulnerable, susceptible, vulnerable, being very yin and not having a ground or truth in my life. And so it was just very romantic. I picked it up also because I was having a struggle with nutrition specifically, and this was appearing to be all very kumbaya and like this is the mecca the world should be, sort of thing. And also there's this fact that which kind of supported my binging habit, which was that I could eat all the fruit and all the pasta with ketchup and whatever like that I want, because it's quote unquote healthy and not harming animals, so I can just eat all this and I can be content with it in me, so I wouldn't need to feel like I need to purge it like I would sweets or something. And so this was like a step in the right direction, but it was also very unbalanced and coming from a place of mental skewydy, and like toxicity. Yeah, I soon adopted the whole 9 yards of veganism and started being a preacher. This would have been my senior year in high school, so I was like raving about it, to everyone, because I felt like it was a place of sincerity, in thinking that it was the truth, that I felt like I needed to tell people they can be healthy without harming animals and like creating the karma or whatever, and so I felt like there was that obligation to tell the world about it. And another principle of my vegan journey was to show that one can thrive and build muscle completely plant-based. And so I like picked up bodybuilding, which was not helpful for my body to heal or repair itself.
Yeah.
Regard, and also the vegan diet was very depleting, but in turn I did build mass and muscle, but it was probably really low quality and just all like carb based mainly, and just like not probably not ideal tissue at all in that regard. But a great lesson came from this, also looking back, was that people will like ask for your truth if they feel like it resonates with them. Like, you don't need to go out preaching your truth to the whole world, but because it's like not a lot of people are interested, but it's somebody takes notice in how what your being is or how you operate in the world, and then those are the people who will like come to you and see what you're doing or see what you're all about, and those are the actual people who would like benefit from hearing it. So kind of a little side note, like lesson from that experience was that all you need to do is just be yourself and be true to what you feel like you're doing is right for yourself, and then other things will fall in place and people will come to you if they feel like there's truth with you.
Yeah.
But that was not the case with veganism, because I was pushing it on everyone. I was preaching it.
Yeah, I generally find, and I think I've mentioned it before, that people who start veganism usually do it from a place of not feeling good, and the fact that they're over protecting animals, like going above and beyond to preach and protect animals, is actually an indirect way of taking their attention off themselves, of how bad they feel. So they sort of push it somewhere else, and redirect that bad energy outwards and onto other people. And I think that's something that happens subconsciously, in my opinion. That's just my views. Dr. Wilson also thinks the same thing. So yeah, that's something I've found.
Yeah, I think that's a factor, definitely. And it's also just a really big like sugar diet, or it can be. I was like a really high carb, like 6-7 bananas in a smoothie, probably 1,000 calorie smoothie, 6-7 bananas, dates, like soy milk or rice milk or something. Hemp seeds and pea protein powder isolate, just these like concoctions of just gut busting foods, like lentils and tofu and ketchup and brown rice pasta all in one dish. And it's like these are just concoctions of trying to get like as many grams of protein as pounds of body weight. Yeah,
it's
just
a big,
looking
it's a
back
big
how
mess.
extreme and ridiculous.
You generally find as well that in order to sustain a vegan diet, you've got to import chia seeds from this country and get tofu from this country and go and get avocados from this country. And it's actually like, if a vegan diet was natural, then you would be able to sustain yourself on your immediate environment. And you can't really do that with veganism. You have to take B12 supplements and, nutritional yeast and this, that, and it becomes this big conglomerate of buying a lot of exotic foods and supplements to sustain a diet that's just unnatural, And in order to have a natural diet where you would potentially be able to sustain the diet on your immediate environment, there has to be animal protein involved. It's just kind of a sort of fact that vegans don't really like to admit.
Sure. And there's also never been, to my understanding or knowledge, there's never been a multi-generational study of a purely vegan society or heritage. Even like people, argument was that Okinawans in Japan, some of the longest living people, and they're all plant-based, but they're not vegan. They still eat fish, to my understanding, and eggs and dairy, just in a lot lower quantities, but probably because they don't need it as much as the rest of the Western world to be healthy, they probably live a lot less stressful life and things like that. So yeah, I was just like on a complete sugar roller coaster, you know, like eating massive fruit platters and things like that. And that was another contributing factor to just that stimulating
keeping
lifestyle.
you stuck in the head. Yeah, exactly.
Yep, and that very yin and things like that. Can't blow out, you know, just like complete mess. And also the theory that the candida and all the sugars in your gut creates the alcohol that like goes to your brain was very present. I can look back and see that as a big contributor, like my headiness and brain fog, you know. And also, I'd like to just note on the veganism that it's like there's a big thing about climate change with that sort of paradigm, but that like all of the transportation and production of like avocados from Mexico and etc. That's like that's just, is kind of counterproductive because I have a local food co-op that is all like mainly sourced in the Pacific Northwest. The eggs, which are like farms that are just like within my city, you know, area, or meat that's been like butchered at least in the Pacific Northwest and things like that, you know. So like it's able to be a lot more locally sourced, and perhaps than sustaining off bananas or something like that. But it wasn't much. It was probably just under a year that I like had managed to be vegan, and I wasn't even completely like I was like 99 vegan. Maybe I had some like egg noodles, which had like some egg in them or something like that, you know, like some egg pasta throughout that period. But um, yeah, I was just very programmed into that mentality of thinking that eggs were chickens, periods, you know, and like why would you eat that, and like all of that sort of thoughts.
Yeah.
And but one of the main factors that drove me to consume animal products was just the um, digestion was just I was constantly bloated and just had this like full just expanded gut, and I am a really thin framed person, so that was extremely uncomfortable because my skin's like very tight, you know, and so just having this constant bulge and like just gut is just not fun. um, and and also I just kind of felt like not good or healthy after a while. It was just becoming not very sustainable, and I incorporated in my first dish was some like salmon that I had just steamed like in a pan, and some eggs, um, and I just felt like completely different after that meal. Like I felt like more like in my body a little bit, and just like I had some like clarity. Like I kind of looked around and just felt a lot more present. And so that was just kind of like a feeling and a sign that I should, you know, continue with animal products and things like that. But so that's kind of my reintroduction.
Yeah, I mean, how did you? Let's try and get on to starting the program again. And
yeah, sure thing.
What happened? You know, how you sort of had an epiphany to start again, and then you know, let's hear about the journey to improving your health.
Yeah, sure thing. So I had kind of been starting to be more interested in health from the vegan point on, with just nutrition and just general well-being. And I think the program was in the back of my mind throughout this time period. And so that was I had my first test February 2017, and then quit it probably like April or so, May maybe of 2017. and then became vegan in 2018. And it would have been probably about like mid or late 2018 that I decided to try meat again. And so I think 2019 thereabouts, my mom ended up it was a long story, but she ended up losing the house due to not being able to put payments on it, and she was trying to sell it, but she just couldn't make the payments or sell it, so had to buy it essentially. And so then that forced her and I, because I was the only kid of hers living with her, to move into her friend's place, which was a husband and wife and two grown boys, which like well into their 20s, but they still live there. And so I moved into there, and I was still smoking weed periodically, like through veganism. Through this whole period, I was still smoking weed periodically. Like, it was time, like maybe months at a time. I'd be like doing it really regularly and have some sort of courage to quit, and it's just kind of that sequence. And so at some point when I was in 2019 staying at this lady's house, I had determined or chosen to do like a liver flush detox just out of just doing some like health studying or reading and seeing that that was a procedure you could do. It was like fasting and drinking grape juice and Epsom salt and then like a cup of olive oil or something. And so I did that, and it's not much surprise. Like, no, I didn't pass any stones or anything. Like, I was probably just like 19, you know, like a great need for that necessarily. But I did, and after the fact, I felt like I wanted to make sure I had like all the bile out. I didn't feel like I wanted to make sure I cleaned everything out that had been released, and so that prompted me to do or to look into coffee enemas. And I kind of had like a mini rediscovery of the program on my own accord of studying and finding Dr. Wilson's article, I think, on coffee. And so I had then proceeded to do my first coffee enema when I was like 19, I think. Yeah, summer of 2019. And it's just like a life-changing experience because it's just like
same thing happened to me,
humorous. It's humorous, but it's like it's true. It was just completely sense of like liberation and just feeling like just like aura cleansing, you know, sort of like just wow. You just feel like you could take on the world after your first coffee enema.
It's pretty astounding, right? You know?
Yeah.
It also gives you that realization of like, oh shit, like I've clearly got some sort of biochemical toxic stuff going off. You know what I mean? It's so easy to get in the mindset that my brain is broken and I can't do anything about it. And you do a coffee enema, it's like you've not been to see a psychologist, you've not done any CBT, you've done a coffee enema, and then all of a sudden you've got this elation feeling. You know, that's when I started to put two and two together, thinking, oh, like this is some physical stuff going on, big time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that kind of prompted me to like look into the free program and to because I kind of knew like in the back of my mind the whole time that the program was like the truth, but it was just like my experience with it initially was so like traumatizing that I was like, I'm just gonna smoke weed. You know, I don't want to think about that or whatever. I was kind of running away from it this whole time. But growing a little bit more, having some more experience, you know, I kind of started to make the gradual change to incorporating the program and eating cooked vegetables again. And this time, what the main difference was is I was doing the coffee enemas almost daily to start. And it's kind of like a blessing or a curse, this sort of devotional aspect I have to this personality where it's like I'm all or nothing. You know? So it's like if I'm going to do something, I'm just going to like to the most capacity that I can. So that can be benevolent or malefic, depending on what it is exactly. But in this case, it was cough enemas. So I was like starting to do them really often. And this allowed me to start shifting my time from like what I'd otherwise be spending is playing video games or smoking weed to the program. Like I was spending more time cutting and cooking and eating vegetables. I was spending more time doing enemas or um, just just kind of changing my lifestyle. But I wouldn't have been able to do that if there wasn't the program's procedures and lifestyle to adapt to. Like that's why stopping marijuana in the past wasn't working because I had nothing else to implement in its place. And keep in mind that I was still smoking weed occasionally during the free program. This would have been summer of 2019 and into the fall and winter. However, it was a lot more light, like a lot more mediocre, and just like I had a lot more control and like will over the situation. And another helpful thing that actually got me off of weed was using CBD based marijuana. So like the actual flower is like maybe 1% THC and then like 12% CBD. So you literally just get like a little buzz, like it's probably smoking like some basil or something. I don't know. Like it's virtually nothing. And so that was like a helpful kind of weaning off sort of situation. Um, and so thereafter, I got really committed and started to feel a lot better in the free program, even though I was still occasionally drinking like sake. And
So how much of the program have you improved the diet since the last time you did it? Obviously now you're doing the daily enemas. Is this been some big improvements from the first time round?
when I was doing in 2016 or 2017.
Yeah, in the 17 time you started.
Oh yeah. When I was
Now you're saying you're feeling better. In 2017, you weren't feeling better. Clearly now you've added the enemas. Is the diet a little bit more strict?
Oh yeah, no, I was actually doing the diet a lot more properly. Like I was eating a lot more. And that's what was missing. I was like it wasn't sustainable before because I was just like steaming, like a couple cups of vegetables for the whole day. And like that was it. And I was also running a mile, just like I didn't understand the program or know much about it to do it properly. But this time I was actually doing my own research. And it's funny, like I actually felt like I was making more progress doing the free program right than having the full program and not doing it right, like just taking the supplement and eating whatever I thought like I could at the time. But it was then I was doing the free program and became really committed and diligent with it and ordered some supplements like from what I recalled, like I think I ordered Harriman and kelp. It was like the ones that Dr. Wilson recommends for the free program, just like the generic TMG and stuff. And so this was kind of like that started me getting going more. And this was like late 2019. And then I had ended up going to a kind of community living situation or place called Epiphany Ranch. It's ECETI Ranch in Trout Lake, Washington. in the US, and I
The people listening to this that like going down rabbit holes should know what this ranch is.
yeah, it's actually like world known, and it was
Yeah.
funny, like in the summer of 2019 when I was starting the program, it was kind of like divine intuition or guidance more so came through, and I found the YouTube channel of the ranch, and there's like a weekly podcast that the owner and founder James Gilliland hosts, and it's called EastCity Stargate on YouTube. And just the information and of the weekly shows that he had in there and how he was portraying the information was just all very entertaining, and also really stimulated that, as I mentioned before, that kind of intellectual part of my personality that gets a lot out of like research and learning and stuff. Um, and then I learned that the ranch was only like 2 hours away from where I
Oh
was
wow.
living at the time.
Mm.
And so I just had like a really strong like heart longing and a draw or connection to try to learn more about the ranch and get in touch. And then soon thereafter I learned that they had a volunteer program, and that's actually how they operate is through service exchange. So you help with chores on the ranch and accommodations, because it's also all ran from people going to stay there and camp and skywatch for any anomalies that might be present on the vortex. And so it's in part of the crew, but that you get fed and that you get your meals and accommodation taken care of, so it's a service exchange in that regard. You're employed and paid in just getting to live that experience. It's kind of like an ashram a little bit, but a more
Mm.
westernized, like ranch style ashram. And so I ended up becoming a volunteer there, part time in the summer of 2019. It would have been like July, August, September, into the fall a little bit. And then I went back to my mom's friend's house where I was staying for the winter.
Mm.
But in February of 2020, so a couple months, like a few months after I had gone back, um, I was contacted by the ranch to see if I was available to come out early for the 2020 season. So I literally went back in like late February of 2020 to the ranch.
While you were there, you were doing the program.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
this was a free program from 2019 summer to um, up when I got my first retest again was in April of 2020.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
How are you feeling? Give the audience a bit of an idea on how things are going so far with the sort of program and your health and how you're feeling and stuff.
sure, well, things were really it was just like becoming a lot easier to um, Lord, how do I just do what like I felt like I needed to do in life. Like there's a lot like more willpower and energy in general, and like and um and groundedness and like structure in my life, that it gave me the um foundation to be able to change my lifestyle habits that I knew were self-destructive, like marijuana and
Mm.
different things like that. And so it's also the visual snow like kind of started to clear up a little bit, and
Brain fog improving, derealization improving. Yeah.
oh yeah, it was just like I said, it was kind of like a general being like things were just getting easier, like I was just getting more energy, and it was like a gradual thing, and I contributed that to the religious coffee enemas because that was just keeping things moving out, and it didn't really give a lot of time for
Yeah.
toxins to be released. And then like
Yeah.
at least early on, like I found myself more recently after doing coffee enemas, generally daily for over a year now, that I've found times where like it's okay to take a break, you know, like it's okay to like do a day or two of not, and it feels like kind of I don't feel like the urge like I need to keep getting toxins constantly. But earlier on, I feel like that was a um, huge factor in the sustainability was smashing the coffee enemas, because I wasn't really doing the saunas early on. That was kind of more recently. I started
Mm.
really implementing those.
Mm.
So yeah, like I was doing the free program for like about 6 months and a little less before I reached out to you again. And after like 3 years, of, you know, of distracting myself and running away, and like I just found myself in a place where like that was my drive and structure and truth in life was this program. And so I reached out to you again in like March, late March or something, got my retest in early April, and um, got my supplement recommendation in the full program. And it's just like skyrocketed from there. I ordered the all supplements optional and everything, and was just like smashing those 3 times a day, like 6 megapan initially a day for like probably a couple months, and now I was just like feeling so good. You know, it's just
Yeah.
like giving me everything I needed. And that was what was recommended was optional of 222 megapan, and
Okay.
so that was kind of the another like manifestation of my personality, like going to the extreme. But
Mm.
it was okay then, because I felt like I was just so depleted and so malnourished that it was just like it just felt good and right, just taking a lot of supplements. And I was living at the ranch during this period, so it also it's quite a remote place, like it's a ranch out in the middle of the woods in Washington State, and so I was, had the ability to groceries, because I think a big factor of the ranch is like holding one's own ground, because it gets a little esoteric here, but in that energy field and in the sort of vortex, if you will, things come up, like a lot of anything that doesn't resonate with that energy there that's within you, like traumas or um, belief systems, like limiting mental concepts, things like that will come up to be healed and addressed. It's like an energetic retracing of emotions and mental concepts.
Yeah, it's
And so
pretty
to be
mind
able to
blowing.
be grounded and handle your stuff, if you will, while you're there is like a really huge thing, because it's it's like almost regular for anyone who's there to have the inclination to portray their problems or stuff on other people, to project all their crap and like blame people. But it's not like you don't get those, but it's whether you act on them or not.
Mm.
Program really helped me to slow down and be grounded and present in myself, and to be able to clear up those traumas. I think coffee enemas were another superpower, because I was doing those every day there.
Yeah, I kind of say to
And
people now. I kind of say to people now when we do the Skype consultations, I honestly think without the coffee enemas, people are not going to get very far with certain situations, especially visual snow. I pretty much tell everyone, if you don't do the coffee enemas, you got visual snow, you're probably not going to get very far. So important.
exactly.
So
And
important to detoxify the liver.
right, I completely agree. And it's in both regards. Like if you're more spiritually oriented, it's such a powerful aura cleanser, and just like just it'll just like completely shift your, if you're like having a more like negative outlook or something like that, and you do a coffee enema, it's just like metaphorically just like flushes everything out. Like you just like, you can just be like clean slate. But also on a biological standpoint, it's extremely, it just makes sense. It's effective. And so yeah, I adapted into the full program while living on the ranch, and I was able to go and do my own grocery shopping on the ranch's behalf, just because, I don't know, they just recognized I was, I don't know exactly why, because that's kind of I was like taking their money and like driving to the, it just seemed like a special kind of like situation that I was gifted to be able to really do deep healing. And I don't know if any of viewers are familiar with your story, but you going to Thailand, and like how there's these kind of just like divine um, directions and kind of influences that allowed like certain things to take place that otherwise just would have been like, what are the odds, sort of like synchronistic things.
Yeah, it's something weird when you sort of commit yourself to the program and do the program pretty much to a, in all its entirety to a certain degree. It's as if you get put into the vortex, as Esther Hicks likes to call it. You get put in this vortex and things just, you get put on this path, which is quite sort of confusing when you talk about, well, if you just do coffee enemas and eat diet and take these supplements, then all of a sudden you're going to get put onto this sort of special path that heals you and deals with all your traumas, and you become more spiritually aware. And it's like, what? Like, that makes no sense whatsoever, but you just cannot explain that to people without them actually experiencing it themselves, And it's that experience which not only heals them, but it makes them committed to keep doing the program. It makes people like you want to go on and do testimonials and stuff, because you want to share, you want to try and explain to other people that by doing X, Y, and Z, you get put onto this special path. And it sounds arrogant to say it. It sounds weird even saying it, but yeah, the coincidences that come from it is just mind-blowing at times. Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's kind of I don't know, the only analogy that comes to mind is like trying to understand like UFOs as a nuts and bolts sort of phenomenon, when it's like in reality it has like multiple dimensions and aspects and layers to it. And that's kind of how I view the program, is like you can be like you can view the program as just very like very physical and like all diet and sauna and stuff like that, but those all with them such a vast and a much greater aspect on a more unseen level that I'm like starting to recognize a little bit more after doing some. But yeah, I just felt really compelled as of recently, and that's why I reached out to just share my experience, because I was at a place of just complete despair, and I was just scared. Like I was just frightened, because especially in the school during that period, I was like, I was just very disassociated with the whole world, and it's just been remarkable and a blessing and a miracle that I'm even able to be like talking with you with the type of energy or personality that I do have now. And I owe it all to the program. And just will always be grateful um, and recognizing of the power where it's gotten me even thus far. And I'm still in the infantile stages of really being at optimal health, but it's just such a drastic improvement just over. I will be coming up on a year in April of doing the full program, but I was still super diligent months before doing the free program. And
He went through pretty big copper dump, right?
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is another thing. We talk about copper. We talk about how common it is to have copper toxicity, and people can't quite grasp it. And then all of a sudden, the copper will just shoot through the roof on the test, like it did with you. And yeah, maybe you could just quickly explain that situation, because it is overwhelming when it happens.
Sure. Well, yeah, I've come to recognize and understand that the emotional and physical connection and ties between the detoxing, and feeling and experiencing, retracing on all levels. I mean, for some reason, I didn't really experience a lot of physical symptoms that I was too aware of during this whole copper dump. It's mainly been really psychological and mental, um, from great like feeling of apathy and despair. Like, it's been really a lot recently. This past specifically, I think the past 6 months, but since I even really started a full program back last April, I've just been unwinding all of the destruction and experiences that I've had the past about 6 years since I was like 14. It's really when it started, and even in a childhood, my whole life, but specifically going through like that high school period. And it's profound, like even up until like last night or a few nights ago, I'm still having dreams of abstract like high school memories, because that was very like traumatizing period of my life. And so I think that's just my body and psyche processing and coming to terms with all that stuff now that I'm in a place to where I can start to address it, like where I have the energy and understanding and self-love and structure and centered lifestyle, that I can really start to be able to be looking into these things and coming to terms with them.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, it's interesting how the program literally reverses things, and usually when you've gone through all these traumatic experiences and you start the program will slowly de-layer and fix these layers that you've built up around yourself, and you go back and unpeel a new layer and unpeel a new trauma, unpeel a new issue you need to resolve with self-love, or an issue around parenthood, and it's pretty astounding. So how's your sort of visual snow doing now? I mean, that's a big thing for a lot of people, watching my YouTube channel especially. How's that going specifically? I don't expect it to be completely gone, but maybe you can just give people a little bit of hope, I suppose, with the fact that this is something that, in my opinion, can be healed.
Absolutely. Well, that's actually how I found your video, and that was the only symptom that I really researching at the time was visual snow, because I feel like while it may be separate entities, I feel like visual snow carries with it disassociation and depersonalization, because you're like looking through this screen that doesn't even look real. Like it seems like those are all side effects of having the visual anomalies. But now it's like a gain dial, like on a microphone, or a volume knob, maybe on a music receiver or something, and it's just like it turned down, like the degree of the opacity of the visual snow has like become a lot less noticeable, it's not like it's flooding my field of view or really distracting even. It's something that I would have to look at a clear sky or a blank wall and focus on it, and then I can start seeing like little squigglies. But it's like to a degree that's not like debilitating or depressing or anything like that.
Yeah.
And it will.
Go on.
Go ahead. All right, I was just saying that it will still flare up during specific reactions, or if I'm sometimes if I'm doing a coffee enema or doing a sauna or something, like then like there'll be like little pops or something. But I feel like that's kind of a detox reaction.
Do you find that visual snow tends to increase whenever your liver, for example, is under some stress? It could be a detox reaction with the coffee enemas. It could be you've drunk some, I don't know if you drink alcohol, you could drink some alcohol and that stressed out your liver, or you've not slept and that stresses out your liver. Because my theory is that visual snow, a lot of it comes from liver toxicity. And what I found as I've healed myself, as I've healed my liver specifically, I found that when my liver was doing well, my visual snow would be really unnoticeable. And then whenever I'd do a coffee enema and that coffee enema triggered a healing reaction and the liver was overwhelmed, then I would get visual snow back. Or sometimes, you know what I mean, I would drink some alcohol and that would stress the liver, bring it back. Is that something that you've managed to correlate to? Liver stress and increased visual snow?
Well, I mean, it very well could be, and that's what makes sense from a biochemical sort of standpoint, but I'm not really too familiar with like specific organs yet, in regards to just pinpointing it to the liver. I would say, like comes to mind like kind of the whole system, but it perhaps makes sense that it's mainly liver, but I feel like adrenals and the whole gambit too. Like,
yeah, I mean, the adrenals need to send signals to the liver to create specific enzymes with the vitamin A regulation. So it's definitely a whole system. But one thing I've been trying to explain to the visual snow community over the years is that this is probably not isolated to the brain, which a lot of people think.
No.
The brain
I
is.
don't think so.
Yeah, the brain is obviously where you convert light signals into something that you can visually see. But the root cause, in my opinion, comes from elsewhere, more specifically the liver. It's a systemic problem. Because if you've got liver toxicity, you've also got adrenal fatigue. If you've got adrenal fatigue, you've also got sort of low thyroid output. If you've got all them three things not working well, your detox pathways are shut down, so you're starting to accumulate mercury and aluminium and arsenic and stuff. So trying to explain to the visual snow community that it might be a wise idea to sort of not focus so much on the brain aspect or the eyes, that could be a systemic thing, And usually when you speak to the visual snow community, they've also got brain fog, they've also got derealization, they've also got fatigue, they've also got racing mind. So we know how to fix it. So maybe by fixing them indirectly, it will fix the visual snow too.
Yeah, I smile when you mention that, because as you know, I posted on that Reddit forum of a visual snow and just explaining myself in the most transparent and honest manner I could have elaborated, and was just stressing that it was just sharing my story and how I've been able to start to manage to address visual snow and come out of this despair and depression that came along with it. And the post was actually removed. I guess it was just causing so much toil in the community.
Yeah, I mean, the post, I read it. I didn't post on it. They actually thought, from what I read, they thought it was me that had posted the original. and that I'd set up loads of accounts to reply on the Reddit, and people was getting attacked. People was getting attacked. I was getting attacked. You was getting attacked, and I was called snake oil scammer, into pseudoscience, and
Right.
what I generally find with the visual snow community is that they're very, very toxic. Even more so toxic than even some of the other forums, depression forums, even suicide forums. And my opinion is that when people start to develop visual snow, I personally think that there's a big derangement going off in the body. The body has to really get to quite a severe state of derangement for visual snow to manifest itself. So usually that's when the liver's not working well at all, when the adrenal glands are not working well at all. You've got mercury toxicity, you've got copper toxicity like you. And I think that breeds a very toxic, depressed, angry individual. Because when you think about it, visual snow really is fairly trivial. I mean, if that's it, if you just get some little sparkles in your eyes and everything else is fine, and you're happy-go-lucky, you've got energy and you can speak to people, then why all the cynicism? It's really, really bad. I mean, you've not been a part of that community for as long as I have. I mean, been hanging around the forums for 10 years trying to explain, and still, he's a scammer, he scams people. It's like, man, he's just talking to a brick wall, man. It's pretty depressing sometimes. I'm just trying to help. I mean, your post that you did was a genuine post from the heart, just trying to explain to people, and the post got removed. And it makes you realize
Exactly.
It makes you realize just the battle people have with trying to just give a different approach to the narrative of drugs, to the narrative of pill popping, and you know what I mean, like seeing the body as singular systems rather than a whole system. I mean, the concept is quite simple, but unfortunately, the propaganda of the medical machine is pretty intense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. So, but I mean, I feel like with the program, it has a some sort of like divine path to find its way to people if they're ready, like this, and it really has to come from them. And I mean, I was just sharing it in hopes, not necessarily not to reach by any, but just to like share, because I know how much desperation is in that snow and that symptom, and I just had a very strong compulsion to share that like it's not doesn't that way, like there is a lifestyle and means to address it. But one lady did reach out to me, and apparently another of your clients, it was actually Liam, who was on a previous testimonial. Apparently a couple people reached out to him that he said that they could contact him. He's done the program and whatnot. So even if it's just one person that learned about the program, worth it for me. But
it's a shame because a lot more people could learn about it if they was a little bit more open-minded. So maybe
I hear you.
Maybe you can post this on there and just explain to them in a nice calm way and just say, look, go to 1 hour 45 and take a look, because we're just being genuine.
Right.
So, cool. Do you have any sort of closing remarks?
Yeah, I kind of have this thing coming to mind that's I've been able to with the program. It's kind of just like transmuting your life a little bit. It's just like taking these concepts and mental habits and lifestyles that you've been living with for a long time, and being able to transform into something that is self-serving in like a beneficial manner, in a life-giving and self-loving manner. It's like this is what in my opinion, the program really provides. It provides a foundation for souls incarnating into the human being, to really do what our soul desires to do. It's like that program, this program, in my opinion, that is allows us to really progress on our soul duties and missions, as opposed to being restricted by apathy, depression, or lack of energy and stimulants and other distractions, but that the program really allows for us to flourish and experience life, I think, as the universe intended.
That's it. That's it. That's a good closing remark. And my opinion is that we've all got a job to do. We've all got a role to play in cleaning up the earth and trying to restore the harmony that God initially created, and to stop the ego's desires, because a lot of the reason why we're in this mess is because of our egos have gone off in different directions, and we've not been able to listen to our heart and listen to the universe and get ourselves on a path whereby we're sort of giving and helping the earth rather than we're against it. And I think the program, for whatever crazy reason, I'm sure we can have philosophical debates on the reasons why, but it just heals you and puts you on a path that's good and truthful and allows you to really be who you was born and designed to be, in one sense. So
absolutely. Yeah.
So it's very enlightening and in a sense, you feel relieved that your illness actually becomes a really big blessing in disguise. You realize that all them years that you were sick wasn't actually lost time. It was actually training time. It was, it was a big training lesson, and teaches you sort of what truth is and what to do, and what's good and what's not good, and puts you on a path of what God initially intended you to do in the first place.
Yeah, so, I would like to add briefly that that's another theme or motif that I've come to know looking back, is that I can be unconditionally grateful for everything that I experienced. All of the trials and tribulations, the lying and stealing I did, because that was all required for me, for this person, to find the path that I have now. I needed to do all the wrong things enough times, more than once, on several occasions, to recognize that that's not sustainable, that's not the path, and that to find the program again. And so thank God for all of what I've gone through.
That's it, man. Awesome. Cool. Well, I hope you enjoyed that testimonial, guys. A good 2 hours to get yourself in, to get your teeth into. So yeah, thanks, Michael, for coming on. And hopefully in another couple of years, we can get you on again and see how your journey's gone.
Sure. Look forward to it. And my pleasure, Lewis. Thank you.
No worries, man. All right, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all soon. Ciao.